My kid's never going to be broken homeless. So that's nice. But it's still intimidating, because what 23-year-old can really comprehend $280,000? And much less after you add the average 9% interest or whatever, $450,000. I didn't know what that meant. And actually, if I could have comprehended it back then, maybe I would have made different decisions. Maybe I would have skipped the Air Force and gotten loans. I don't know. But we had never seen anything like that. I didn't even know where to begin.
Welcome to the Physician Sense Podcast, a podcast designed specifically for physicians, offering a breakdown of complex financial topics to help you develop your financial IQ, further your financial journey, and improve your well-being. Whether you're a medical student, resident, fellow, or attending physician, you're sure to learn something new that will benefit your journey. And now, your hosts, Chad Chubb and Tyler Olson.
Welcome to this episode of the Physician Sense Podcast. I am Tyler Olson, and I am joined, as always, by my gleeful and sunny weather friend, Chad Chubb. And together, we actually have another guest with us, a emergency medicine physician who I've known for a number of years now over social media. Steve Sample is joining us, and we're going to be talking about a variety of things. Thanks for joining us, Steve.
No, it's awesome to be here. It's good to finally hear your voice in person, other than your TikTok recordings that I follow you on.
All right, TikTok. I'm glad that someone's watching those.
I'm watching.
What piqued my interest in having a conversation with you was as you were talking, or as you were posting online about the financial implications of your daughter getting into medical school, which is it's an awesome privilege that she can do that, but it's scary too, right?
Terrifying. I have never both been so proud in my life and so fearful for the next decade or so of my daughter's life, just not only beyond the financial implications, but just, kind of the brutality and the long hours and the mental stress and stuff of what she's got to come. It's something that I didn't actively discourage them from, but I let them know up front, there are a lot of pieces of medicine that are rough, and certainly they got to see me come home pissed off and burned out and stuff like that. So she certainly has learned that she doesn't want to be an ER doctor, but that's about it for right now. So,
yeah, man, I can imagine the multiple ways in which you could get tugged, in this situation. Do you remember what your med school tuition was for you?
So when I went to medical school, I started with a 3-year-old and a 6-month-old. I took a super non-traditional route into medicine. I always thought I wanted to be a doctor from the time I was a little kid, but there was a period of time back in 1994 or so where I dropped out of college to move to Nashville to be the second coming of Garth Brooks. I used to wear boots and a hat, and I could sing my ass off. And of course, as one does, one falls in love with a girl. So remember, I'm a Southern Indiana redneck, right? I had a mullet and a mustache, all of it. And so I did it like the Southern Indiana rednecks do. I met a girl, I fell in love, I proposed, I got her pregnant. We had we got married, and then we had a baby immediately, and then I went to college again. So I started college over back in 97 or 8. And I didn't start med school till 2001. And at that point, I had 2 little kids. So I actually took the Air Force HPSP scholarship. So the tuition for me, she actually, I believe, if I remember correctly, was $42,500. It was more expensive to me because I had to cross the river just like my daughter is. So she's at University of Louisville. We're only 7 miles from the front door of the school, but crossing the bridge basically doubles the tuition. I think at the time my in-state school, Indiana, was $12,500 for me. And it was $30,000 more to go there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was it just because that's what you got into, or did you? So
no, actually I applied early decision to Indiana, and that's where I really wanted to go, but got accepted to Indiana. But my wife was terrified that we were going to have to move, 2.5 hours north to Indianapolis, and she had a 6-month-old and a toddler, and how am I going to care for the babies and this and that. So she begged me to apply to Louisville, which I did, thinking I'm not going to get in because I was a very late applicant, but I did get in. And then we just had to sit down, and I said, I cannot even, we were kids and we were broke, like literally eating macaroni and cheese out of the box, all that stuff. And it was, neither one of us came from any kind of money. So whatever was happening was on us. And so I looked into the Air Force scholarship, and basically we just sat down and I'm like, we're either going to IU or we're going in the Air Force. And so we went into the Air Force. So I spent 8 years active duty there, with 2 deployments to the Middle East, and more than paid back my my medical school tuition. More than, yeah,
That's a high cost, high sacrifice.
yeah.
And not it's the way you're describing like your thought process. It's just another example of hundreds and hundreds I've heard where the money is a piece of it, but boy, is it not front and center. Like it's just,
it's a lot. Yeah, it is definitely a lot. And the money back then was absolutely front and center for us. It's, I think a little less so for my daughter, just because we didn't really have a backstop 20 years ago or 23 years ago or whenever it was when I started, but she's got a backstop. Like my kid's never going to be broken homeless, so that's nice. But it's still intimidating, because what 23-year-old can really comprehend $280,000, and much less after you add the average 9% interest or whatever, $450,000. I didn't know what that meant. And actually, if I could have comprehended it back then, maybe I would have made different decisions. Maybe I would have skipped the Air Force and gotten loans. I don't know. But we had never seen anything like that. I didn't even know where to begin.
It's just the way of it. It's like these kids, they've got to make these decisions early on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, obviously with like non-traditional routes, like you had mentioned yourself, it's just, there's different ways, of course. But for many of them, it's like, I want to go into medicine. This is what I want to do. And I like the desire is there. And, the inclination to learn is there, but we've only our brain can get saturated so quickly. So have you had conversations about money like before or like during the pre-med process where, she had questions, and like, did she throw any questions your way that you thought were like that were hard to answer, that like took a lot of time to think out?
I don't think really. I think most of her process and her thought process of where she was going to go and how this was going to work was more of she's an anxious kid, just like so many pre-med students. It's like, where am I going to be? How am I going to thrive there? Because she was in kind of the same situation as me. She was actually accepted into Indiana, their program, but she got sort of, it's very strange because she grew up in the rural part. We spent 10 years in a small town called Jasper, Indiana, which is actually where I still practice. And they kind of shoehorned her into the rural medicine track, and she wasn't really feeling rural medicine. They were going to have to do all 4 years on Terre Haute campus. It was she kind of got blindsided with that. And so it left a really filthy taste in her mouth. And she's seen Terre Haute. My wife has seen Terre Haute, and it's kind of sketchy. And it's, and it's 3 hours and a half from us. So away from her support system. And I think she just thought that for her mental health, being closer to home, maybe where it's at. But certainly she fears the debt. Rightly so. I mean, the debt's ugly and it's scary, and the interest rates suck.
Yeah. So like I was actually speaking with a medical educator at MSU earlier today. We're talking about like building a curriculum for their third years, just to try to like, what are they supposed to be thinking about? Because there's not a lot that can be done like that's going to make a dent in the debt, obviously.
Right.
But we did talk about a couple of really great habits to build. That will serve them well, like through training and beyond. And that was learn how to manage cash flow.
Yeah.
Like you get the loan disbursement, it comes, and it's like, I don't know if she's getting it like 3 times a year, I presume.
I'm not entirely even sure myself, because we're kind of taking it year by year of how we're assisting her. We had talked earlier a little bit offline about, so she has gotten her first semester tuition. She took the amount They dispersed the amount of the tuition. She did not take extra because
Okay.
our deal kind of before she started medical school was we didn't know what our help was going to look like. I knew I didn't want her to float out there alone. And so it was thought that she was going to be living in a different town, most likely. So our deal was we are going to be your cash flow. We're going to pay your rent. We're going to buy your groceries. And then the tuition and stuff is on you. But since she decided to go close to home, we're helping by letting her live in our house. So her cash flow right now, she has none. She has some savings. She worked all the way through college and stuff, but she's cash flowing $0 as far as I know. We're her cash flow. But
Yeah.
so that's, and admittedly, that's a super privileged position for her, right? I mean, it really is. We're blessed to be able to do that for her.
I mean, gratitude. I can feel it, and how you have expressed yourself in the past and even now. I think it's important to note that anybody who's a first generation physician, they absolutely will want that for their kids too.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that you're able to provide that for her, it is a privilege. And it also speaks really well to the effort that you and your wife have made to be able to create that environment. So you're gracious for that it's a good situation. It also speaks well to like, you've done a lot of good things to be able to get her there. And we all want that for our kids, right?
For sure. You can't die with it. And I've been fortunate. It doesn't hurt me too bad to let her live here and to help do that. And we're going to try to float her a low interest rate loan for roughly half-ish is what I'm trying to do. I've picked up a little 2 days a month or so of moonlighting job locally, just trying to increase my cash flow so that I don't have to impact I've got a very defined savings plan and I've got 10 years and I'm getting the hell out. And I don't want to impact, I don't want my upfront help for her, who is going to go on to live no matter what she does, she's going to make a nice living. I mean, certainly if she ends up in general pediatrics, she's absolutely in trouble, but for not taking the cheapest route to med school. But if she ends up in any kind of specialty, she should be able to swing loans. But I did not want to stretch out my retirement 4 years to do that, and plus I think it's helpful to have skin in the game. I do. But like, maybe that's old fashioned, but I think you need to feel a little bit of the weight of it.
Absolutely. I've seen that too, like even in the process of, I don't know if you can speak to this, Chad, of your own experience, but like, even at the point at which, like, if someone decides to, like, they want to do some financial planning, when they pay the fee to be able to start working, that has like that skin in the game mentality, like, all right, let's do it. Like, I'm committed. And like, I think that applies in a lot of different areas of life.
Sure.
Yeah. We have some of our physician clients where some of their kids are now going to medical school. So Steve, like literally your same spot. We have some that their kids are just starting undergrad. And to me, I could agree more with you. And that's one that I think it's really important. I think especially for these up and coming generations to see that value, that sweat equity per se. But, we have clients that more than capable of making sure their kids don't have loans.
Sure.
And they're pretty much like, you're going to take on some loans. Like now our conversations when the kid's not on the Zoom per se, like they're like, look, if they got into a bind, of course, we're always going to be there for them. But like, they also need to learn cash flow and realize like school's expensive, whether it's undergrad or medical school. So I do think that's important. It's funny. It's a conversation. Our kids are very young, 6'4", 2, but it's a conversation that my wife and I have too. Like, we'll be there. We'll make sure they don't have, many big mountains to climb, but they still got to have skin in the game. So I love how you say that. Everything you said so far, I think it clicks with a lot. And that's why I was excited to have this conversation, because it's the real life scenario that individuals go through, whether it's your own personal story when you went through it or now planning for your daughter to go to medical school. And you probably had these same conversations too, even on the undergrad part of it. Just it's real life. And I think that's why having these deeper conversations to show people like, look, this is normal. This is the conversations. This is kind of the hard thoughts that you have to go through. So no, I couldn't agree more. I think having some skin in the game is so important. I think more so for current generations and probably even past, just because it's just a different world today. So, whether that's good or bad, I think it's just good to put a little extra into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you and your wife and daughter talked about like her career track, and she expresses, some potential interest in one specialty or another. Does the topic of what income can be made in those specialties, does that come into the conversation? Not that it leads the decision, obviously, but does it come up?
Sure. Absolutely. I mean, for sure. Like initially she was, she loves little kids. And of course, there's a lot of youngins that go in, they go, oh, I love kids, I want to be a pediatrician. And then she started looking at what general pediatrics looks like and the struggle bus that it can be. And, you come out with $400,000 of loans and you're kicking around at $120,000 a year. You better marry somebody with a high income. Like it's going to take a dual income. We've been lucky in my field. My wife hasn't consistently worked in a long time. She once I got into the attending world, she went to very part-time to none. And so we're a single income family now and have been for a hot minute. I guess the world would look different if I was married to an orthopedic surgeon. I've got a couple of partners who are married to even specialists that are tripling our income annually, and I'm like, and she at work one night she was like, "Why don't you just pay for her school? Just write a check." And I'm like, kiss my ass. I was like, I make a very nice living. I was like, look, I was broke growing up. So the fact that I have what I have is miraculous. I think I was the first college graduate on my side of the family. So, but I was like, I also can't just write a check for $280,000, I guilted myself. I had for a year, a new Corvette. I bought one of the new model Corvettes a couple of years ago. It was gorgeous. I loved it. And I drove it for a year and I sold it because I'm a tight ass and I had to remodel the kitchen and living room of my new house. And I got a home equity line of credit. And the night before I was going to charge that off, I was like, I can't do 7% interest on a kitchen. I cannot. I also couldn't write a check, but I had a depreciating asset in my driveway that let me write a check, So I turned 50 this year, so I've got my sights set on you, Porsche 911. I'm coming for you. Yeah, I'm coming for you if my advisors will let me do it.
It's good that you've got those things in mind. You talking about it, man. It helps it to become real. Mm-hmm. And I want to mention this too. That what's the phrase, Chad? It's you can borrow for education, you cannot borrow for retirement.
Right.
Something like that. Yep. And so the fact that you're making sure that your own retirement is on a track and that you're doing what you reasonably can after that's cared for, it is a loving thing for our kids to be able to take care of ourselves. Otherwise, there will be costs for them in other ways.
That's exactly right. For sure. You got to make sure you're okay. I don't want my kids to have to spend their high earning years taking care of dad because he's in a nursing home or whatever, kind of in the prime of their lives. So I want to have that all set up for me. I'll take care of me. You do you. And if there's some left over at the end, it's a payday. Fine. But
yeah. Couple things that I thought maybe the next time the money conversation or career conversation comes up in your family, a couple things I thought would be helpful to share that and if you have any questions, just fire away.
Sure.
Another thing that we talked about third years earlier today with that medical educator I was telling you about was preparing for the expenses of fourth year.
Oof, I remember those.
And I think ERIS fees went down a little bit this year after. what was the special? Was it OB-GYN that went out on its own? Their own match.
They stopped doing they went to their own separate match. I think I read something about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And the AAMC, they derive a tremendous amount of revenue from the ERIS fees. And so, it's frustrating, and it's like these kids, they're not earning an income, and these fees can range anywhere from, I think they got to be spending at least $1,000 if they're applying to I think it's 15 or 20 programs or something.
Yeah.
But once they get up to 30, 40, 50 and into the hundreds, if the international medical graduates, they tend to do that. We're talking
because now that the fact that it's all online and you can interview on Zoom, these kids, the amount of interviews they're doing is insane. I mean, it's insane. Like, I can't imagine it, honestly, because we used to, I mean, I'm sure we applied. So I was a little hamstrung because I went through the Air Force. So I didn't have the Air Force. Actually, the year that I went in, they eliminated all civilian positions. So if I was going to match into my specialty, I was going to match active duty, and I did. But I didn't even get to interview at a civilian program. I had went through the application process, but then they were like, oh, no, there's no spots. So you're active duty or you don't get it. But yeah, these doing 40, 50 interviews is crazy.
Yeah.
And paying for all those. I guess it's a little, the cost is made up because back 20 years ago or so, we were actually having to fly out to every, like if you go to Louisville and you want to live in New York City, you're flying to New York, you're flying to LA and so they were just getting loans for plane tickets, loans for hotels and things like that. And it's awful. So
Interesting thing, I've heard that like virtual is still very common, but in the more competitive specialties, and picking on the orthopedic surgeons again,
yeah, sure.
We talked about earlier today that as far as the medical students, the group that I was talking with last year, they were all in person for that specialty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I don't understand all the dynamics of that, except that. Actually, someone posted about this yesterday. Someone not in medicine, just someone talking about how their mom years back told him, they're like, you got to get a job, you got to comb your hair, put on a shirt, and go there.
Right. Shake their hand.
Yeah, don't just apply online, because if it's easy, then you got to do the next thing. And he was saying how he went to get like his first retail job. What did he say? He said he applied online. His mom was like, hey, you got to get out the door, go clean yourself up and go talk to him, go shake hands. And he went there, he spoke with the hiring manager, and she said, well, you got to apply online. And he said, well, I did that already. I just wanted you to be able to put a face to the name. And then she hired him, and he thanked her, and then she thanked him.
Yeah.
And he's like, why are you thanking me? And she's like, because I don't have to interview I don't have to look at these 500 applications that I got.
Right.
And so I'm wondering if PD, like, the program directors and such, like, to what degree that impacts the interview process and the fourth year costs.
Yeah, it's certainly easier to do it this way, but there's a human factor that you can't, I'm still in my pajama pants, man. You can't tell. I just put on a shirt. I've got my Tommy John sleep pants on. I got up about 45 minutes before we started chatting.
How do you know I'm not in my boxers?
I know. That's the beauty of Zoom. Yeah. Hell, I used to go on, earlier in COVID, I was Brian Williams' redneck COVID correspondent on MSNBC, and I was on a time or two a week, and I was in my pajama pants 100% of the time with a button-down shirt. Yeah.
As that approaches and, she refines like what she wants to hone in on, then those sort of costs will become more evident. Communication about what's coming. The fact that you're able to and you want to support her financial and intangible ways is wonderful. And even like any other medical students that may have to just be figuring out things on their own, no matter what, everybody needs to look ahead at what's coming. And it's just like the fourth year is you're just bleeding money the whole year. You got to like see how bad it's going to get, because if you write it out, then at least you know what the bottom of the pit looks like.
Right.
And then you can see how you can start to to ascend back up as you start to, as they start their intern year and so forth. So writing all that out, like once it becomes real and she knows like, yeah, I'm going to do in-person interviews, or no, I'm going to do virtual interviews, and I'm going to apply to 35 programs or whatever it is, writing that out. And like also what our living expenses going to be in April, May, June, before she starts earning her intern paycheck,
right.
All that, writing it out will help her and you too, to know
for sure.
This is just what this year is going to cost. Right.
Yeah. It's funny. They charge you the same amount of tuition for your fourth year. There's a lot of discussions around fourth year, because the educational piece, other than being out and about on the wards and the rounds and auditioning interviews, and it's like, why is she paying $72,000 to then pay to go do an away rotation? Why is she paying the same amount of money to her university when she is very likely to spend half her year gone doing away rotations?
Mm-hmm. Maybe the schools justified it to themselves, and they say that they're giving the students a discount during year one, 2, and 3.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Yeah.
No way.
They're averaging it out. Yeah, no, it's a lot. It's a lot to think about, and I feel guilty on both aspects. Like sometimes I feel guilty because like it feels super privileged, and it's like, oh yeah, but my daughter's not going to suffer those stings as much. But then I also feel guilty because I'm not 100% covering her. It was like, hey man, if I just picked up 2 more shifts a month, I could probably swing the whole year. And I don't know. It's a strange place to be first generation high income. Yeah, I guess like there's the poor kid in me who had no help, and then the person with a reasonable income that has help. Like I've always told them I'm not rich. I'm high income. I'm trying to get rich, but I'm more likely. I won't be what's considered rich until, well, it's 2 generations down the road. If I die at 60, they get a lot of life insurance. We got to build that. We got to build that down the road wealth. But I'm just trying to get by and be reasonable and help where I can. But it's a weird guilt on both sides of the coin for me.
Something that this is not exactly the same thing at all, but it just made me think of something that my wife told me the other day. Like sometimes when I'm at work, I get really focused in, and I'm like, because I like what I do very much, and I get really focused in to the point that sometimes I'll like forget to eat lunch. I'll be like, right. Oh, I should have eaten. And she's told me, she's like, listen, remember, we need you to take care of your eating, like of yourself. You need to make sure that you're just a person, that you're getting the things that you need so that you can be the person that you want to be for us. And it's like, I appreciated her reminder on that. And I think something similar might apply. Like just because you could pick up a couple extra shifts,
right,
it doesn't mean that that's what's going to be best for her. Like it doesn't, like right. You're going to, like being a quality parent and right. husband and friend, like that is like of tremendous value. And right. like if overworking creates like this stress that just you can't be who you want to be.
Yeah it's strange when you get into like one of these, like once you start seeing, especially because we ER docs, we tend to be just hourly wage guys, right? Some of us are more in the business side, but I'm a W-2 guy with a little bit of 1099 income this year. But when you start looking at it and you spend what is today, Monday, I've got nothing. There's a chance I don't take off my pajama pants today. I don't know what's coming. And it's like, should I have worked? I was like, they had an open shift. I could have made some change today. I could have paid for yeah. So when you start seeing your time in terms of dollars per hour, it gets hard not to feel like you should be working all the time because, oh my God, if I work 25 days a month, I could make like $1 million, and of course then you die young and you don't know how to come out the other side. But
emergency medicine, more than any other specialty, at least from my experience as a non-physician, that's like the group that we have to force from a financial planner side, lovingly force, like, here's your travel budget. You need to spend this before the year is over.
Make them go.
If not, you're going to be done at 45, and then the plan blows up. So yes, right. I'm forcing you to travel so that we can work longer because mental health is there. Or like, hey, I can be in this role until 45, 55, but then I got to transition out of, sprinting down hallways. Like we got to change up.
Sure.
But I think your specialty in particular is one where that work-life balance is I can say outside of physicians, work-life balance is vital for everybody, but in particular,
right.
Emergency medicine, you're just like, you need to decompress. And like you said, it's easy to pick up that shift here or there at moonlight, and it's good money. So you're like, okay. Yeah. So I got that Porsche on my eye still. I can get closer.
That's true.
So it's tough.
Yeah, and I'm a nocturnist. I've been a nocturnist almost my whole career, but the toll it has taken on my body is real. Like just these transitions. Like I used to be able to just, when I was 30, I could just power through after my last night shift and just be tired all day and then get on a normal schedule. There is no normal schedule for me anymore. Like I exist in this weird gray zone of when I'm off work, sleep, going to bed at 3:30 in the morning and getting up at noon or 11 o'clock. And it makes it challenging. You feel a little bit tired and out of it all the time. The sun feels bright in your eyes, and it's definitely a young man's game. And I'll be 50 this year, so young-ish, but 50s. My beard's gray. My hair's gray.
You look powerful.
Powerful. Yes, that's the word. Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. As a matter of fact, everything is hurting right now.
Oh boy. Oh, things to look forward to.
Right. Yeah. Oh yes. Don't get old. I got to go take my cholesterol medicine after I hang up with you guys. I just got an alert on my phone.
Oh, one other thing I was curious about, like as a parent with like a kid in medical school now, is there concepts or like approach to money that you want your kids to embody in their own thinking?
For sure. Like they are like my oldest daughter. We had this, she works for a company called Stitch Fix that sends you clothes in the mail and stuff. She's in the business of fashion. She graduated from Indiana Kelley School of Business with a business degree. The moment she said, like the biggest message I have for kids is compound interest is amazing. Like I put off. So my daughter, the day she graduated and signed her contract, we got online, we opened up a Roth, we opened up this, we signed her up for her 401k at work. And she looked down at me, she called me, I don't know, a few months ago. And she said, I feel really behind because she's dating this boy that comes from money. And so they have tons of like really well-to-do friends that are more well-to-do than the average 26-year-old. She was like, I checked my retirement accounts and I've only got $86,000. And I went, you have $86,000? I was like, that's amazing. I was like, you just turned 26. I was like, holy shit, Haley. I was like, do you know how old I was before I had $86,000? It was like 10 years ago. Like I was a full-fledged doctor, and so I was so stoked for her. And I just sat down with her and I got a financial calculator and I was like, say that you stop working today and you never contribute to this again. You're going to have, it was, I don't know, 1.3 million at 65 or something like that. And she about blew her mind up. And I'm like, yes. And you're not even saving that much yet as your income goes up. So like those little bitty bits, I opened my first retirement account at 36. Very bad decision. So I am saving actually a tremendous amount trying to catch up to my peers who started their first retirement account when they were 28 or, 22. So just teaching them the beauty of compound interest and set it and forget it investing, just this amount of money goes away. It's like a tax. You never earned this. You never had that. Don't look at it. And that's the biggest thing that I'm putting on my kids. The moment you have an income, we're contributing, even if it's just a little bit, because I didn't. And now I have to work until I'm 60 and I have to save, like the goal is like, I'm trying to save $137,000 a year, every year for the next 10 years. And it's just the amount I have to put in to make up for all those lost years of compounding makes me like physically ill. Like you just look back and you think of, oh my God, if I had enough money when I was in the Air Force to invest, but I was like, when I get out of the Air Force, I'm going to double my salary or triple my salary. I'll have time then. Because I was never taught this stuff. Like I said, we came from nothing. And so, yeah, so that's the conversations we have. The moment you can, we do.
That's great advice. I'm glad to hear that. I think about the application of it in my own life. And you know what? It's not just about the knowledge at all. Like it's so like, cause like, professionally being a financial planner, it's like, the risk of what's the phrase go? The cobbler's kids have no shoes. Is that how that goes? That potential for even like letting the urgent things of life to just kind of bowl you over constantly. It's very easy for that to happen to anybody.
Yeah.
And so being able to like bring that back to center and having like regular communication within our families about what are the priorities, what are we trying to work toward here, is super important. So that's good that you're instilling that early on.
Shout out to your daughter as well, because like you said, $86,000 around 26. That's insane. That's awesome.
I mean, seriously, I mean, my net worth was not positive until I probably didn't have a positive net worth until I was, I don't know, 40. I mean, maybe.
Yeah.
I kind of want to know what she's investing in. Like, maybe we need to get a hold of this 401k.
Yeah, we had her max out her Roth. I think we just put her to start just in an index account, like a Fidelity Index, S&P 500. I'm not sure how she's invested through her 401k at work.
Yeah,
and she has some useless stock options. Stitch Fix, the company she worked for, they give her X amount of stocks, she vests in as part of her deal. And during the height of COVID, when all the businesses were closed, she was super excited because her stocks got as high as $93 per share, and now they're like scraping $3. So yeah, just like all the other online businesses, Tonal and all those other, or Peloton, that everybody just assumed nobody was ever going to go shopping again, but they do. So
gyms were closed forever at that point.
That's right. Yeah. Though I will tell you, since I found Stitch Fix, I have not been shopping for clothing. Like, everything comes in a box and I just go yes or no. And it's a beautiful service.
It is a good model. It is.
Yeah.
In your defense too, starting at 36, I'm sure Tyler would also say this. I think that just describes physicians very well. And while you may have some colleagues that are like, oh, I started younger, that usually is like early mid 30s is not an uncommon conversation. And I usually blame student loans as like the main culprit, as like if there is anything left over, it's likely going to student loans, even if we do have a good PSLF payment in there, whatever the case would be. Right. But I know that you have your two daughters as well, and I think probably the difference of where the retirement accounts are at 26 is also a really good example of that same story, but in your own household.
Right.
And you just get that later start, and you got to crank it up. Hopefully, the income is higher to give you a higher percentage.
Right.
It's tough because you do miss out on that early compounded interest.
Yeah. It is. Yeah. And that's another thing, like when you're talking about PSLF, because my daughter has some interest in things like HEMONC, which very oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes ends you up in a nonprofit type facility or an academic type facility. And so then I wonder, because I'm trying to cover half as a low interest loan, at least that's what I'm doing this year. I'll be a very friendly banker. So if there's ever a struggle, you don't get missed payment penalties and things like that. But we're actually going to draw up a loan agreement just to make it official. But part of me was like, should I just let her eat the debt up front and see if she ends up in a PSLF type career path? Because otherwise I've extended what she owes, but decreasing the compounding. So it was just all these weird in my head hypotheticals before we tried to figure out what we were going to do.
It's a complicated topic there too, because we have this conversation with clients, and the problem is you get capped out on how much federal loans you can take.
Right.
So there it's like, you're having this conversation like maybe what if, but then from the parent's perspective, you're like, you're really in a tough spot. You're like, I don't want to push a specialty, but I'm going to push a specialty.
It is. And again, we've put ourselves in a, there's a decent enough chance that when I kick the bucket, even if she's still chugging along paying loans, that she'll be able to wipe them out when I die. At least she doesn't like me to talk about that, but she's like, you're never going to die. I'm like, I know. Yeah.
One thing to think about in terms of that conflict of like, should I pay to help or should I just let the loans ride, is the interest rates on the loans are pretty high.
Yeah.
If the way in which you're providing the support is not hurting the essential savings plan that you have,
right,
you sound like a united family that are, that work together.
Yes.
You are, in a way, you are buying like a reverse mortgage or a reverse bond, so to speak, in that she's avoiding the interest payment on a bond, or like being a borrower,
right,
where it's essentially saving that 8-9%, whatever that is. And if you view yourselves as like a family unit, and not to say that you're going to be relying on her financially in the future because that savings plan is in place, but still as a whole,
it's like a little annuity.
You're saving. You're, as a family, you are avoiding that cost.
Right.
And so there is some merit to that. The other thing is, I just find, like, I like PSL, but I have this love-hate relationship with
Yeah.
it because it is so far in the future.
Mhm.
And from a Department of Education administrative perspective, it just is the Wild West. I have no idea. Like, I don't think that PSLF is going away for current borrowers. I think that that would be an incredible threshold that would have to be overcome.
Right.
That would be disastrous in many ways. So I don't think that it's gone. It's more the risk that, like, you know, what does she want to do? And being able to, like, extract that factor from her decision making, where she can be like, I want to do this.
Right.
Like, that's of tremendous value too. So unless you're like giving up stuff that you're like, that's
no, we're not going to give up, but we're going to help. Yeah. But yeah, like, and I was finding out, I've been doing my own little research because I thought I would just like give her like a 1% loan. Apparently that's illegal. Like, I don't know.
So the IRS has liked all your comments so far. You have said everything by the rule book, so I'm proud of you, Steve.
Oh, I was going to say, because I looked up, I was just looking at that, and it said, oh, if it's not a gift, you have to charge like this minimum, which I think it was like 4.5%, or something like that. Otherwise, you get into potential, I don't know, fraud, I guess. I don't know. It seems silly that I can't loan my daughter at like, 0.5% or whatever, but I guess 4.5 would keep up with some inflation. And it still beats the hell out of 9.1, which is what it would have been had I not covered.
Yeah. I think what you're running up against there would be the gift tax.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't, at the moment, at the top of my head, I don't know of any of the other legal issues that might be the case, but there is like the whole exemption, like the lifetime exemption against your
money
gift tax. So it's, in any case, I mean, if the guideline is generally like just make it 4.5%, just do it, and it'll sort itself out.
Not to change your strategy, Steve.
Yeah.
But one unique thing is, remember, both you and your wife can technically each gift her $18,000 per year.
Right.
So if you did want to avoid like the IRS official loan policy, like you have some flexibility in there.
And that's about really, honestly, because I think my owe out is going to be in the $38,000 range for second semester, which would get close to that 18.5 a year. The problem is a little bit of equity between the siblings. My oldest daughter is out working and fully independent, other than she's still somehow lagging around on my damn phone bill. My cell phone bill is $500 a month. I've got both of my parents, my mother-in-law, and the four of us on it. So at some point, people were supposed to Venmo me some money every month, and it turns out it doesn't happen. But yeah, like we had talked about I have talked about like gifting, and we haven't gotten this deep into it, but I have a feeling that it would be thought of by the remainder of my family if I gift my daughter $150,000 or $200,000 over the next 3 or 4 or 5 years, that I will also then owe my oldest daughter another $150,000 or $200,000 for complete equity. And then that really, all of a sudden dumping that kind of money, it is going to impact, like, either I'm going to have to step up and work more, or I'm going to have to figure something out. So I think as a reasonable, like a low interest rate loan, I feel like that's a good kind of in between. And if my oldest daughter needs some of that, we can always reassess. But if she needs to get her MBA or something like that,
she's got $86,000.
Yeah, right. That's what I said. She's rich.
We'll wait till our next conversation a few years from now. She's gonna be at 500,000 because that gift is gonna go the opposite way.
Yeah, right. She's gonna be like, I'm loaded.
Thanks for getting on that podcast, Dad. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I can tell, like, even the fact, like, with this sort of like figuring out the details of like equity among siblings and all that, you're like, good communication. It's obviously it's being had in your family. It's such a critical piece of being able to make good money decisions. I really, really am grateful to you, Steve, for taking some time to talk with us today about some things, that you and your family are talking through. I'm really hoping that anyone who listens today, that they'll because I get messages from other parents who are like, hey, my kid's an undergrad and trying to figure stuff out. So there's a lot of people in your shoes that are like trying to be like, what do I do here? So your insights have been really, really helpful.
Right. And to those parents, like, it is terrifying. It's terrifying for me, even though I've ridden through it and I'm sort of walking through it now. But remember, on the backside, it's hard to, especially for people who don't come from money, which, all first generation doctors, unless their parents are business owners or something, a lot of us start as just kind of regular low middle class kind of science nerds. The income is real on the backside. Like, I make it a very nice living, except for in the rarest of cases and with the most stupid out of control decision on the back end, your kid is likely to be fine. They are likely to be fine. We, physician, nothing takes as long and nothing takes as many years off your life. But in the end, we make not only a high income, but a reliably high income over the course of our careers. And just with a little bit of forethought and planning and listening to people like Tyler and Chad, like, this is it's doable. It's just scary. The numbers get big real fast and it's super scary, but they'll be okay.
Thanks for that, man. All right, well, we'll let you carry on with your pajama day and
get back to bed.
Nice. Yeah, I'm awake now.
I didn't get to say it at the start here, but
sleep out of my eyes, so I'm okay. I washed my face for you.
Thank you for your service as well. We didn't get to touch on that at the very start, but with the 2 deployments and 8 years of service, we certainly appreciate
24.
it.
I got drilled this weekend. I transitioned into the National Guard, so I'll cross 24 years in the boots starting in this May. Yeah. I'm getting close, though. I'm getting close. I think 1.5 more years, and I think I'm out.
My brother-in-law moved down here to Florida, but he still has to go back to Baltimore for his training because they never transferred him down here. So he flies back every now and then for his training. I think he has one coming up soon. So I know that National Guard grind as well. So thank you
absolutely.
for all that. Mm-hmm. And it was great meeting you too. I know this is one of those relationships that you and Tyler built up, but awesome to meet you through the podcast here. And thanks for coming on with us.
Yeah.
Your insights, your family dynamic, I loved it all. So thank you.
Sweet, man. Thank you.
And that's it for today's episode of Physician Sense. We're looking forward to continuing to share some simple and very actionable financial concepts with you next time. And we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot, both of you. Good to see you all.
Thanks, guys.
This information is for general purposes only. This information is not intended to be a substitute for specific professional, financial, or tax advice, as individual concerns vary. Please see a financial professional, CPA, and/or an attorney in regards to your own individual situation. Wealth Heals Advisory Services and Financial Planning offered through Vicus Capital Inc., a federally registered investment advisor. Olson Consulting LLC, offering advisory services and financial planning, is a state-registered investment advisor.